Hello, this is Diaz and a new author's story for my channel Russian Revenge Story. Enjoy listening. Those who are not expected. Oh my God, Ivanova, what's wrong with you again? Lilia Sergeyevna slammed the folder on the table as if she was punishing not a student, but the entire medical faculty. I've written everything down for you. What, where, to whom. What's wrong now? Nastya stood at the threshold, crumpling the belt of her robe in her fingers. To say that she was embarrassed was to say nothing. Her mouth formed a smile, but it turned out to be something between an apology and an attempt to breathe. I did everything as you said. I just wanted to clarify. Clarify? My girl, did you come to work in medicine? Or to clarify? The head nurse rolled her eyes. What kind of punishment am I getting, my God? Why did they assign you to me? Nastya shrugged. She would gladly work somewhere in Skliff, but there was no Skliff in their city, and the assignment after college is a merciless thing. You don't choose, you are chosen. Since childhood, Nastya dreamed of being a nurse. A nurse, not a doctor. She always thought that doctors decide and nurses save. They are there, they give a hand, they stitch up, they give injections so that it doesn't hurt. She wanted to be like that. Not a hero, not a star, just good. So, you want to work for real? Lilia Sergeyevna slammed the door of the locker. That's great. The emergency room is yours. Today is Friday. The city will go out into the streets and return to us with injuries, bruises, and fumes. It will be fun. Nastya nodded. She did not divide people into alcoholics and professors. For her, they were just patients. Everyone has pain. Everyone has their own story. And if someone is feeling bad now, then it is not in vain that she is here. In the emergency room, everything was exactly as Lilia Sergeyevna described. Noisy, heavy, sometimes even comical. Someone was singing, someone was shouting, someone was demanding. The head doctor immediately. Nastya dove into work like into water. She did not think, she acted. Bandage, for, compress, analysis, repeat. A couple of hours later, when everything suddenly calmed down, one of the nurses handed her a cup of tea. Why were you sent here? Because I want to work. Nastya smiled, raising her mug. Dr. Ivan Konstantinovich, a man of about 40 with slightly worn glasses and kind eyes, looked at her with interest. Are you new? Yes. Nastya. And have you already annoyed Lilia Sergeyevna? No. She shook her head in fear. It's just. She said that I was getting on her nerves with my requests for more assignments. Got it, the doctor grinned. So you're a workaholic. I'll write it down. They laughed. And then the flow began. The same one Ivan Konstantinovich had talked about. People streamed in of different genders, ages, smells, and stories. Nastya worked, forgetting about time. The night passed as if in a delirium, but for the first time in the right delirium. Subtle, necessary, real. No one is just like that. The morning greeted her with a pain in her lower back and the full realization that she, Nastya Ivanova, was finally in her place. Everything hurt. She wanted to sleep and fall, but her soul was calm, as it happens only after something very right. She was already changing her clothes, getting ready to go home, when Ivan Konstantinovich caught up with her at the exit from the reception. Nastya, wait. He did not smile. This time his face was serious, even a little wary. He took her by the elbow, gently, but so that Nastya felt a pang inside. There, he nodded towards the long corridor. One patient was admitted, without documents, without words. The whole reception is now wondering, who is he, where is he from, and how did he even survive until this morning? Is his condition serious? Very. Ivan Konstantinovich was silent for a moment. You are free, but if you want, you can go and mess around with him. Lilia Sergeyevna hadn't sent anyone there yet. She had no time for that. She was lining up someone in the dressing room again. Nastya nodded silently. She wasn't thinking. She just turned and went. The room smelled of iron, either from blood or rust. The man on the bed seemed lost, a battered face, abrasions, wounds, but something about him wasn't homeless. Posture, or maybe his look, even through the bruises. My name is Nastya, she said, bending down, and I'll help you, okay? He didn't answer. He just twitched slightly, as if affirmatively. Nastya carefully began to wash the wounds. The work was familiar, but with this patient everything was different. He didn't look lost, more like hidden. When she was finishing, Ivan Konstantinovich entered the room. He looked at the patient's face for a long time, then raised an eyebrow. You know, I would argue that this is not just a man from the street. Something about him doesn't add up. Nastya nodded. She had felt it before. She just didn't know how to say it. He had a piece of paper under his fingernail. I carefully pulled it out. There was a phone number, and only 3 words. Call only if you believe. And you? I believe. Ivan Konstantinovich grinned. Well, let's check. He left. Nastya stayed. She sat down next to him, applied a cold compress, and waited for the stranger to open his eyes. She felt that this story was just beginning. The man without a name. The man woke up in the morning. He moved barely noticeably, as if he was listening to his own body, checking if all the bones were in place. His face was still swollen, but his eyes became clear, deep, disturbing. Where am I? His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken for weeks. In the hospital, Nastya answered calmly. You were admitted last night. They found you on the outskirts, beaten. No papers, no name, just a note. He sat up, hissed in pain, and lay back down with difficulty. Then he asked in a muffled voice, Did you call? Nastya nodded. Ivan Konstantinovich, the doctor on duty, dialed the number himself. The man who answered arrived 20 minutes later. He acts as if you're not just familiar to him, but he's also afraid of something. The patient didn't say anything. He just closed his eyes. Nastya didn't insist. She knew. You need to give a person space, especially if he's just starting to remember who he is. Your name is Mark, she said more quietly. That's what he called you. You're his son. The man opened his eyes, and now they panicked. So, he's here? He was. But we didn't let him in. He left a number and asked me to call when you were able to talk. I wrote it down, but didn't pass it on. Thank you, Mark exhaled. Is he dangerous to you? He's my father, Mark grinned, and there was such bitterness in it that Nastya's skin crawled. And now, please, can we have some silence? Of course. She stood up, straightened the blanket, and was about to go, but he suddenly grabbed her hand, weakly but firmly. You aren't like everyone else. You don't ask, you don't dig, it's not often. Nastya smiled slightly. Or maybe I just have a good sense when a person has been silent for too long. He nodded, letting go of her hand. Nastya walked down the corridor, quietly, with the thought that now everything was definitely confused. During her shift, the man without a name became someone. He had a past, unbearable as, it seemed, a future. And for some reason she already knew all this would be connected with her too. Too personal. Nastya, you're all in yourself again. Veronica poured her some strong coffee from a plastic mug, still thinking about our mysterious patient. Yeah. Nastya tiredly rubbed the bridge of her nose. He's unusual, calm, even too much. It feels like he's not in a hospital but being interrogated, and every breath he takes is under his control. Have you fallen in love by any chance? Veronica grinned. Very funny, Nastya snorted. He's more likely to scare you than attract you, but not because he's scary, but because there's something going on inside him, under his skin. She paused and added, and, he's definitely not a homeless person. Even if he was on the street for a while, it was temporary. He moves, talks, even keeps quiet, not like a person broken by life. He's just hiding. At that moment, a buzz of voices was heard in the corridor. Nastya left the room and immediately noticed a security guard and two men in civilian clothes bustling around Mark's ward. One was wearing glasses and holding a tablet. The other had a face that would be described in psychology textbooks as high-level manipulator. No entry, said Nastya, coming closer. The patient hasn't come to yet. We have orders. The one with the tablet answered dryly. We are from the Social Security Service. Your patient is listed as missing. We need to ask him a few questions. Nastya frowned. How do you know he's ours? He was admitted without documents. We have our own sources, the second one intervened. And you don't have to know everything, young lady. Then you don't have to come in either. Missing people are found, but they are treated first, not interrogated. And then a calm voice came from the ward. Let them come in. Nastya flinched. Are you sure? Yes. But stay. When they entered, Mark was already sitting up in bed, pale, but with a straight back. Nastya noticed how his hands were shaking just a little, like a shadow. Hello, Mark Andreevich, the man with the tablet began. We just received a notification about your presence in this clinic. You do understand that your family was looking for you, right? My family was looking for an inheritance. Not me, Mark cut in coldly. Tell me, is that all you wanted to hear? The second man frowned. Your father is an influential person. He doesn't need your fortune. He's worried. He's worried because I disappeared with land documents in Karelia, issued in my name, Mark grinned. But you already understood that I'm fine. And tell them I have no desire to go back to where they wanted to bury me, alive. Nastya went cold. And yet she stood, because now this was not just a patient. This was a person who someone considered inconvenient. Good luck, said Mark, leaning back tiredly on the pillow. But now I tell my stories only to those who bring tea, not threats. Nastya walked these two to the exit without saying a word, and then she returned to the ward and looked inside. What, is the whole hospital going to know about you now? She asked, trying to joke. Let it be. Mark looked out the window. I'm not afraid of rumors anymore. Silence is much more frightening. And for some reason this is what Nastya understood best. Trust line. Nastya came to the morning rounds, as usual. Only this time she was in no hurry. A lot had settled in her head overnight, and now she knew that Mark was not just a man from the street. He had a story, and, possibly, danger. He greeted her with the same calm half-smile. Good morning, Nurse Nastya, he said, slightly mockingly, but without sarcasm. Good. How are you feeling today? Better. A little. Nastya checked his IV, carefully tucked in the sheet. She did everything mechanically, her hands knew their business, but something else was spinning in her head. I was thinking, maybe you could tell me, she said quietly, looking down. Just humanly. Mark turned his head slightly, studying her face. Aren't you afraid that I'm dangerous? I am, but not you. I'm afraid of not knowing who to trust. And you. It's as if you want to be trusted. That's all. He paused. When I was 18, Mark began, my father told me that there are two types of people in this world, those who give orders and those who carry them out. I was the second, and for a long time I had no doubt that this was how it should be. Nastya did not interrupt, and then I realized that my father considered himself the owner not only of my time but also of my will. He was not just strict, he was a predator, a strategist. Since childhood, he made me into a person who does not feel anything, and if he feels, he must hide it. Why did you leave? Nastya whispered. Because one day I did not hide it. I fell in love, naively, stupidly, seriously. Her name was Alyona. Father decided that she did not correspond to our level, and he got rid of her. Nastya raised her head sharply. Do you mean, not with my own hands? Of course, but I understood everything, and I left, disappeared. I survived, but ceased to be myself, or vice versa. I became one for the first time. He sighed heavily. And then they found me. Not my father, no, his people. They did not forgive me for disappearing, and everything I had with me was supposed to disappear with me, only they didn't succeed. Nastya stood silently, trying to digest what she had heard, and suddenly, without thinking, she said, But you didn't disappear. They can hear you now. I can hear you. Mark laughed quietly. You were sent here for a reason. Footsteps were heard in the hallway. Veronica looked out into the ward. Nastya, they've come to see you. To see me? Well, yes, in a suit, with a bouquet, standing at the counter, like from the TV series House MD, only without a cane. Nastya exchanged surprised glances with Mark, then went out into the hallway and froze. There really was a man standing at the counter in an expensive suit and with a confident smile. In his hands was a bouquet of lilies. Anastasia? He extended his hand. My name is Roman. I'm Mark's friend. How do you know that I know a lot, Nastya, but most importantly, I came to thank you for staying by my side and for not being afraid. I think this is just the beginning. Unwritten diagnoses. Nastya did not accept the flowers right away. She just stood there, confused, pressing her hands to her sides, as if she was afraid that whatever she touched now would collapse. Sorry, she finally exhaled, and who are you? Roman slightly tilted his head, as if trying to see her through the glass. I am the one who was not there in time, and now he is trying to at least fix something. Have you known Mark for a long time? Too much. But, alas, not as much as we should have. We studied together, then worked together. He went into the shadows. I remained in the light. But you know, sometimes you can see more in the shadows than in the spotlight. Nastya wrinkled her forehead. She didn't need metaphors now. She looked at the man and felt something elusive was hiding behind this suit and rehearsed speech. Something that made you want to run and stay at the same time. He said that he was being followed. He's not exaggerating. His father is a man for whom power always comes before common sense, and when you stop being part of his empire, you become a threat. And you? Roman grinned. And I haven't decided yet who I want to be in this story, either an ally or a witness. Nastya looked away. Too many things were arguing inside her now. Her heart wanted to believe. Her brain demanded to wait. But one thought was firmly stuck in her head. If this man is telling the truth, then Mark is in danger. And not only him. What should I do? She asked quietly. Observe, trust yourself, and don't let those who smile too often get too close. And now, can I give you these flowers? Nastya took the bouquet. The lilies smelled like home, the one she had never had. At that time, Mark was lying in the ward and felt something had changed, as if there was a malfunction in his body, but not physical, emotional. And for the first time in a long time, he felt real anxiety. Temperature of truth. The night was anxious again. Nastya stood by the window of the staff room, holding unfinished tea in her hands and watching someone smoking in the shade behind the glass, maybe an orderly or maybe a new patient. The shift had started quietly, but her internal barometer showed a storm is coming. She returned to her post. Mark was sleeping, judging by the indicators, soundly, but Nastya still looked in on him. He was lying on his back, his forehead slightly wrinkled, as if he couldn't relax completely even in his sleep. "Aren't you sleeping?" she whispered, not expecting an answer. "And you?" Mark suddenly opened his eyes. Nastya almost dropped her tablet. A habit, a bad one, not sleeping while on duty. "Did something happen to you?" "Me? No." She sat down on the edge of his bed. "Did you?" He fell silent. He listened to the beeping of the device for a few seconds. Then he exhaled. "They called me today. Some man. Said he knew where I was and that it would all be over soon. Dad's unhappy. That was all he said. Sounds like a joke?" Nastya turned pale, but she didn't show it. "Are you sure it wasn't a friend? Roman, for example?" "Roman doesn't talk like that. He acts. This one threatened. Not directly, but clearly." She clenched her teeth. Instinct told her that she needed to decide something urgently. "I'll transfer you to another ward. Without cameras, without a route in the journal. You'll be listed as discharged, but you'll stay here. You'll be able to rest, without visitors, without noise. And you?" "And I'll back you up." Mark looked at her with gratitude, which contained something more. You're strange." "Thank you." "No, really. You don't look like those who work here." "Because I didn't come here for seniority. I came to help. At least someone." He suddenly took her hand lightly, and Nastya allowed it. Because now, in this corridor, on this chair, they both felt that something important was beginning. Unsigned. Nastya hadn't slept for the second night. Tea stopped invigorating, even strong. The wards breathed evenly. Someone snored, someone sighed, someone talked in a half-sleep with loved ones who had long since passed away, and in the head, a hum, like before a thunderstorm. Everything went according to plan. She transferred Mark to the technical ward, where they rarely looked, corrected the journal, pretending that he was transferred to rehabilitation. He slept, exhausted, both by worries and by his own thoughts. Nastya hoped that at least here no one would touch him. She was walking down the corridor when she saw a letter at the post. A paper envelope, no name, just a neat stamp, the hospital address. The handwriting was masculine, angular, as if the writer was squeezing the pen with force. Nastya tore the envelope. There was one sentence inside. "Turn around, he's already here." Her hands were frozen. She turned around abruptly. It was empty. Only Nurse Vika was munching on a sandwich in the corner, looking at her phone. "Everything okay?" she asked lazily. "Uh-huh," Nastya squeezed out and slowly crumpled the letter. Fear was already growing inside, not for herself, but for Mark. In the morning, Nurse Toma ran up to her at the post. "Where's the sixth one? He was supposed to be here." "In which ward?" Nastya froze. "In the intensive care unit, the temporary one. The one they brought after the accident." Nastya's heart sank. Mark. She rushed into the ward, empty. The bed was made. No trace, no card. Only on the pillow lay a new note. "Too late. Now he's ours." Nastya felt the floor slipping out from under her feet. Anything but that. "Ivan Konstantinovich," she screamed, rushing along the corridor. "The patient is missing. Mark is missing." The doctor flew up instantly. "What do you mean, missing?" "I transferred him to hide. There was a call, a threat, and now he's disappeared, and there's a note in the ward." The doctor turned pale. Then he looked at Nastya the way one looks at a person with whom one's fate is now tied. "We're calling the police. We're going to the cells. But the main thing is not to panic. He might still be here, and if not, we'll find him, I promise." And Nastya stood there, clutching the second note in her fist. It was melting with sweat, but the words were clear and terrifyingly true. When everything falls into place. The next day after her shift, Nastya did not go home right away. She stayed at her post, sorting through papers, tidying up drawers, putting everything in its place. Outside, the evening was already beginning, muffled and soft, as if the city was trying to whisper, "Today will be good." Her thoughts were interrupted by Lilia Sergeyevna's voice. "Oligarch's bride, why are you sitting here so long?" Nastya slowly raised her head and looked at the head nurse. For the first time, calmly, without irritation, as if she were just very tired of being unhappy. "Lilia Sergeyevna, have you ever liked yourself?" she asked unexpectedly, even for herself. She blinked, as if she had been slapped, and then she chuckled. "Well, you have questions. Work better." Nastya smiled without answering and looked down at the papers again. Lilia Sergeyevna stood there for a while, then left, loudly slamming the door, and Nastya suddenly felt that she was no longer afraid. That's it. The next day, she came to work in a light dress and with her hair tied up a little carelessly the way she liked it, not the way they were used to seeing it here, and all the heads in the reception area immediately turned in her direction. "Is this some kind of holiday?" Veronica muttered, not hiding her smile. "Maybe it is," Nastya responded. "I'm just happy today." After the shift, a black SUV drove up to the hospital. He got out of it. The same one no longer, with any traces of wounds on his face, in a stylish shirt, holding flowers in his hands. Seeing Nastya, he smiled broadly. "You look especially beautiful today." "That's because I feel beautiful," she replied, coming closer. He handed her a bouquet. She took it, inhaled the scent, and whispered, "Well, now we'll definitely go for a walk." Veronica and a couple of orderlies looked out of the waiting room after them. Even Lilia Sergeyevna flashed in the window, and no one said anything. They just watched them leave, the two of them, on that very evening that had finally become theirs. Just breathe. They walked around the city until sunset. Nastya never thought that she would laugh at stupid jokes. tell her school stories to a man whom she had recently called a homeless person. And now he was just Ilya, as alive, vulnerable, and real as she was. He showed her photos from his treatment in Germany, told her how his stepmother tried to access his father's accounts while he was unconscious, and how his father finally realized that he would have lost his son if not for one name, Nastya. "And if you hadn't stayed in the hospital that night?" he asked suddenly. "I would have stayed. In any case, this is my job," Nastya answered, looking at the bridge reflected in the water. "It was more than just a job," Ilya said. "I heard everything. You were the only one who didn't turn away then." Nastya remained silent, not because she didn't know what to answer. There was just everything in that silence: gratitude, calm, a little confusion, and a premonition of something new. They stopped at the edge of the city embankment. It was quiet. The evening spread across the sky like soft gold. "Listen, you still haven't told me when you have a day off," he said. "Tomorrow, and then the day after tomorrow. 2 days in a row? It's fate," Ilya smiled. "Maybe tomorrow I'll show you where the city begins." Nastya looked at him carefully. "Only if you show me where it ends later." He extended his hand to her. Then we agreed, and she put hers in it, and that's where it all began. Epilogue. 2 months had passed since that very day when Nastya, not expecting anything, simply went out into the hallway for tea. A lot had changed since then. She no longer shied away from Lilia Sergeyevna. She now restrained her snide comments, and sometimes even addressed Nastya by name, although not without a creak. Anastasia now worked in a different department, but periodically looked into the reception area. Ivan Konstantinovich was always happy to see her. And now there was a gorgeous bouquet on the table in her room, every Monday. No notes, just flowers, just like that. They returned to the cafe they went to then more than once. The young man, and his name was Arseny, turned out to be completely different from the oligarch the hospital gossiped about. He was an ordinary, lively, vulnerable guy, tired of lies and family intrigues. And Nastya was that bright person who reminded him that sincerity is not weakness, but strength. Now they are together, without big words, without pathos, just together. She still says that she is not going to quit her profession, and he says that he does not see a future without her. Nastya no longer doubted one thing. She became the nurse she dreamed of being as a child, and it seems that her life has finally become real, without pretense, without fear, and with great hope inside. Support our heroine with a like and a comment. Let more people see that good always comes back. Do you believe in fateful meetings? Write in the comments who changed your life. If you liked the story, please support me with a like. And to learn about the release of new, interesting stories, subscribe to my channel. All the best to you. Thank you for watching.